Hello, everyone. Welcome into another episode of the Four Quarters podcast, powered by Four Quarters Media. I'm your host, Tyler Bennett, here with you once again. It's episode 21 of season 2 of the podcast. It's another audio edition in our 2020-21 season preview series, a series that has gone about a bit slower than expected, but at the same time, saw it coming. The last 2 years didn't go the best. So I think we're trying to get caught up. We're about 2 days behind. We're getting caught up. We'll get the teams done. It's just a matter of when. So bear with me. We're coming. Just a little bit slower than anticipated. We started off real well. Week 1 was fantastic. Went downhill real quick. But we'll get there. We will get there. We're not going to take too much time up in this intro. Part 1 of episode 21 is our longest episode so far. Caught up with new head coach of the men's basketball program at Douglas College, David Petroziello. And while this does serve as our season preview episode for the men's basketball program at Douglas College, we also used it as a regular podcast episode as well. We looked at David's career and what ultimately led him to Douglas College. Looked at a bunch of various stops along the way. A resume that includes coaching in India, 2 stints in Australia, St. Mary's University in the ACAC, helping that program transition to the ACAC, Keano College, his work with the Vancouver Titans in the IBL, how that came about, the AUS at Cape Breton, Prairie College with the Pilots and his role there, and then now what he's looking forward to at Douglas, kind of what led to that decision, why he came back to the West Coast, and what he's looking forward to most. And we also dissected some of the roster makeup, what they could look like this year with some returnees. Obviously, they do lose at least 4 players. Former head coach Joe Envoltson made the move to U Sports and took the job at Fraser Valley. And 3 of the players from last year's 17-1 Douglas team did transfer up to U Sports to continue playing for Coach Envoltson. Cam Morris, Aiden Wilson, and Giordano Khan made the jump to U Sports, and well-deserved. Fantastic seasons last year for them in the Pac West. But we looked at Coach Petroziello's 10-man recruiting class so far and what each of those players will bring to the table, in addition to some of those key returnees that you'll hear about towards the end of the episode. But with that said, there's a lot of stories in this. I found myself listening a fair bit and just absorbing the experiences that Coach Petroziello has had over his career. And we also touched on the idea of leadership, and with his educational background, what makes an effective leader and what he's seen over the years. And he gave some shout outs to some of his mentors and leaders as he was coming up through the system as well. So even though it is long, I do encourage everybody to listen start to finish, because there's a lot of interesting stories along the way that you may find interesting as well. So with that all said, let's jump right in to part 1 of episode 21 in season 2 of the Four Quarters podcast, powered by Four Quarters Media, with one of the newest members of the Douglas College Royals men's basketball family, head coach David Petroziello. Enjoy. All right, so I'm now thrilled to be joined by one of the newest members of the Douglas College Royals family, David Petroziello, head coach of the Royals. David, how are things with you on your end out on the West Coast?
Good. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to spend some time with you. Appreciated all the work that you're doing for the game. I know I mentioned that to you, you know, privately as well. Like we have such an incredible landscape in Canada for secondary basketball, and it takes someone with the type of drive, passion, and determination that you've got. So,
I
you know,
appreciate that.
thank you for doing all that you're doing, and I'm happy to chat with you. And out here, I'm looking outside. It's mid-20s. It's nice. It's not too
Okay.
hot.
Right.
It's a great West Coast day.
That's not
Um,
bad.
yeah, it's not bad. Yeah, it could be worse. There's no doubt about that.
That's true. And we're getting like a heat wave now. Like we're supposed to be like 30, 35, pushing hot like high 30s next week. Like it rains one day and then it's just you sweat walking to the car and it's like 10 steps. Like it's
Yeah, yeah.
not enjoyable. So like a mid-20s is perfect. If we could get that here, I'm a happy guy.
Yeah, I hear you. Growing up in Quebec, we had the humidity as well,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what gets you, right?
That's the
It's like,
killer.
yeah, you walk out and it's like walking into a wall of moisture, and
Mm-hmm.
that did not, appeal to.
No.
That's not appealing.
And
Yeah,
it's an instant sweat too. Like it's just you walk out and then
yeah,
you're sweating for whatever
yeah,
reason. You haven't done anything yet, and your outfit's ruined for the day. You got to go in and change again.
yeah. That's
Like
right.
it's craziness. But no, I appreciate the kind words off the top. Never really realized how hard it was, how much time it was to do all this. I'm exhausted. If
Yeah,
I will preface, if I yawn in this, it's not due to the conversation. It's due to playoff hockey at 11 o'clock at night on our
right.
time zone and an 8 o'clock work day on a Saturday. It's
I got you, but listen, like if you lose attention in a meeting, we might have to
mm-hmm.
we might have to get some stuff happening right here. Just like all the coaches out there,
Right. Mm-hmm.
someone's nodding off in a meeting, you might throw a paper ball at them or something.
Right. I'll just if your dog will bark, just get your dog to bark, and that'll wake me up real quick.
That would work, and I'm sure he will again. I have no doubt.
Hey,
So,
that's all right.
FYI, everybody, if there's a large sound in the background, that's just our dog.
It's more than welcome to make an appearance. If he wants to bark and have his voice heard, by all means, it's a platform for everybody and animals now, as of today. Before we get into Douglas and what's ahead this year, because this is going to serve kind of as our season preview as well. But before we get into that, kind of looking at your career, we talked before we came on. It's now, you said year 22. You're going on to started when you were 19.
I coached my first post-secondary team when I was 19. I had been an assistant to a junior high team so in Quebec.
Mm-hmm.
The school system, of course, is not the same as in English Canada.
Right.
And so, you go grade 7 through grade 11
mm-hmm.
in high school. And then your grade 12 year, what would be the grade 12 year in the rest of Canada, is actually you're in CEGEP by that point.
Right.
So all the first year CEGEP guys that are playing on, Vanier, Momo, and those guys are basically grade 12 kids.
Right.
In age. And so, when I was coming up in grade 11, I had been an assistant coach to one of the junior teams, the grade 7 team,
mm-hmm.
And the grade 8 team, while I was playing at the high school that I went to, St. Patrick's High School
mm-hmm.
in Quebec City. And then as I went to CEGEP and I played in CEGEP, I also began coaching. So when I was 19, you come out into CEGEP when you're, 17, 18, depending on your birth date.
Yep.
And so, by the time I got through CEGEP, I was coaching already. And,
okay.
Post-secondary.
Before you got into coaching, that was basketball always your go-to sport, or was there other sports you played growing up, or kind of what led you to choose basketball over potentially other sports that you played growing up?
There are basically 3 sports that I could say took up, for the most part, my athletic attention.
Mm-hmm.
So swimming was the first one, actually.
Okay.
And it was kind of by necessity. Like I was born premature, about 2 weeks early.
Okay.
And, I was 23, 12 and a half pounds, 23 inches long. I was big baby premature,
I was
and my
gonna
lungs
say,
weren't.
yeah.
Yeah, my lungs weren't ready.
Okay.
So they had me in an incubator.
Hmm.
And when they got me out of there, the doctors told my parents, get them into swimming. It's going to help with the
Okay.
lung development, right? So,
Hmm.
so there I was. I swam competitively from an early age through to about 14
Hmm.
or 15, and I had some provincial placements. Like the 200-meter backstroke was my thing. I won a bronze medal one time. That was my high. That was the high point
Okay. Yeah.
for me in the pool.
Right.
And so eventually, I did stop swimming. I was gravitating more towards other sports.
Right.
Baseball was the other sport.
Okay.
Yeah, my dad was an Italian American who grew up in Pennsylvania
Hmm.
and had a deep love of the Brooklyn Dodgers.
Okay.
When he was coming up before
Right.
they moved,
Yeah.
and so baseball was his first love, um, and so it was a big part of my youth as well. I'd come home from school.
Hmm.
We had a tarp in the backyard. I would hit off the tee.
Okay.
Um, Field grounders. So
Yeah.
baseball was probably the sport I was the best at athletically.
Okay.
I played first base. I was a pitcher.
Mm-hmm.
I played through junior. Went down to Fort Pierce, Florida, for kind of a prospects camp, I guess.
Okay.
And
Yep.
when I was 16,
Hmm.
and I was told in no uncertain terms by the by the scouts that were there that I was not going to be a pitcher.
Okay.
Uh,
Yep.
so I should focus on trying to be a first baseman.
Right.
And so anyway, so I played baseball coming up, and then obviously basketball was the other sport. And again, that came straight from my parents.
Okay.
My dad played at King's College in Pennsylvania.
Hmm.
Back, he used to like to tell the stories that he played back before there were divisions.
Oh.
Um,
Okay.
and so all the Catholic universities would play each other,
Right.
and so off he went. He played Notre Dame, St. John's, St. Bonaventure.
That'd be cool.
It was super cool, right?
Yeah.
And, now King's is a D3 school,
Okay.
but so anyway, so he played basketball coming up and had a successful high school career and
Hmm.
went to the local university there.
Hmm.
And so basketball that was the other aspect of my athletic kind of upbringing,
Right.
so to speak. And eventually I just gravitated more towards basketball, for a bunch of different reasons. And I think one of them was basketball is such a fluid game, and
Right.
it's so dynamic, and
Yep.
you're so reliant on other people.
Yep.
It really connected with my even just my outlook, like
Right.
the way our family looked at the world,
Right.
as kind of interdependent, and we're not a lone wolf
Right.
kind of thing. And so the individual sport,
Hmm.
swimming, I mean, you're on a team and you swim and you have relays and stuff, but it's
Yeah.
not the same.
No.
And baseball, obviously, everybody has a role to play, but you're not as connected
No.
constantly.
Right.
So basketball just really did it right for
Yeah.
me. And I wasn't as good of a basketball player as I was a baseball player.
Okay.
Pound for pound, I
Yeah.
was a little bit height limited, skill limited back in the day. We
Right.
ran two posts, and
Right.
I'm only 6'3.5", 6'4", something like that. And
Yeah.
like there's only so much you can do.
That's true. That's very true.
When you're not a great athlete, and
Right.
certainly I could not claim to be a great athlete. But I had a keen eye for the court. I could shoot the ball a little bit,
Hmm.
soft touch like that, and so I was a pretty good passer, good screener. That I was a
Yeah.
meat and potatoes guy,
Yeah.
and I enjoyed that. I
Right.
enjoyed providing something like that to the group. So that's why, as we were going, as I was coming up, these different sports all were a big part of my my upbringing. And we did play other sports. Like I played soccer, I played football a little
Right.
bit,
Yeah.
you know, and tennis.
Right.
But those were the three main ones.
I was like I played baseball too growing up, and I played first base and I pitched only because I was the only left-handed player on the team. So they made me pitch by default. And again, learned very quick. Pitching's not going to pan out. That's okay.
Yeah,
Played first base because I, was a little bit lazy as a
sure.
kid. Just, people throw me the ball. I don't have to do anything else really. Just catch it and throw it back to the pitcher.
You
But
know,
like,
you got to remember too, like when I was coming up, I'm a little bit older than you.
yeah.
And so when I was coming up in Quebec City,
Mhm.
like that was the heyday
Right.
of the Expos.
Right.
And, you know, we would take the train on my birthday. You know, my parents would grab 10, 15 of my friends, whatever. We just shoot down,
Mm-hmm.
take Via,
Yep.
and head down to Montreal, go catch an Expos game. I was in the Olympic Stadium when they were playing Philly late. 60,000 building about to fall down.
Wow.
You know, and then of course, you know, season got cut short in '94, and
Right.
it was, and that was the end of it. But
Mm-hmm.
you know, my guy on that team was John Wetland. Like I loved John Wetland,
Mm-hmm.
and he would just come in and throw heat and
Right.
just dare people. And I thought that was me, except I could never get above 87, 88. So, you know, I kind of topped out there, and that's
Right.
why the guys were like, yeah,
That's about it.
that's about it. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's about it. So,
I mean, it's good to like find out early, like this is what you can do, and then all it takes is somebody just to say, you know what, it's not going to pan out, and then you're just like, just deflated. But
yeah,
I'm like you. I knew right away that it wasn't going anywhere. Basketball wise, like I never played. I was a recess shooter. That was it. Never played a game of basketball in my life. It was all hockey all the time, and then somehow we ended up here. I don't know
yeah,
what
yeah.
happened or what turn I took,
The
but
game's got gravity.
it's
It brought you in.
it sucked me in real quick. I don't know. I really don't know what happened. Like my parents have
Yeah,
no clue. They're like, you were hockey all the time, baseball,
yeah.
whatever. The one sport you never played. Here you are. What happened?
You know, it's interesting. Like the talking about like when to intervene with like youth athletes and stuff. And there's a
Mm-hmm.
fine line between,
Right.
you know, prematurely, you know, declaring someone to be incapable of something,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, what you have though is, like in my situation at least, was a redirection.
Right.
Right. It was like, look, like you're kind of splitting time here between two different things.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe, you know, rather than thinking you're going to progress as this one thing, put your focus on this other thing.
Right.
Because I could hit the ball pretty good,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and for contact and power
Yeah.
and, you know, hand eye and you know, sort of stuff at
Yeah.
first, you know, was also, you know, it was pretty good. So they were like, look, if you sort of dedicate yourself to this, you know, you might be able to kind of make your way
Mm-hmm.
up in the world, so to speak.
Right.
But it was right around that time as well that I got, you know, really kind of made that decision that I wasn't going to pursue baseball for too much longer.
Right.
That I was just going to get in, you know, throw myself into basketball.
Right. Looking at what kind of got you into coaching then? What was it that really drew you into coaching, and then at the CJEP level, kind of what got you started in coaching in the first place?
I think I've always been a coach. You know, I think I was brought up to be a coach, you know,
Okay.
kind of, so to speak. I think that you know, coming up in the family that I did,
Yeah.
with two educators as
Mm-hmm.
parents, Both of them had played.
Mm-hmm.
Both of them had coached in different
Right.
ways.
Mm-hmm.
So you can hear my dog in the
I
background.
think he agrees. I think he agrees with
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
So, I think it was kind of like almost like a foregone conclusion, I guess, that
Mm-hmm.
we were going to end up in some type of coaching or slash educational slash teaching, role
Okay.
in whatever form it takes, whether that's as
Right.
a coach or as a teacher or,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
In fact, my sister also became a very successful coach in the sport of synchronized swimming.
Okay.
And she's coached at the national level here in Canada and worked, also
Mm,
overseas.
right.
In her
Okay.
case, yeah, she coached in Switzerland.
Oh, damn.
And so we kind of just came up as that. And
Mm-hmm.
I think I was fortunate to play for some really, really good coaches when I was young, right?
Mm-hmm.
Outside of my own parents. And they kind of treated me, not just me, but also some of my teammates.
Mm-hmm.
They treated us as leaders
Mm-hmm.
and expected us to be able to think
Mm-hmm.
and be reason and be intuitive and empathetic
Mm-hmm.
and the sort of that mixology of different attributes that goes into
Right.
successful coaching.
Right.
And so many of us as coaches, we probably were, team captains or
Right.
assistant captains
Mm-hmm.
or, and other types of like formal leadership positions on our teams.
Right.
But more than that, I think we all at some point came into contact with adults who saw that in us,
Mm-hmm.
and then, kind of prodded us in the direction of honing some of those skills.
Right.
And that's certainly the case for me. So it was kind of like not a foregone conclusion, but it was almost like, you stop one thing and you love the game so much, you want to
Right.
stay involved.
It's just one of those
You segue right
redirections.
into it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of those redirections from playing baseball to basketball, and then you redirect it again just into coaching. And the writing may have been on the wall a little bit for
A
you
little bit.
guys to get into coaching, but
Yeah.
all it takes is a little bit of guidance and, like you said, someone to kind of point it out and show you these attributes that you have and take it to the next level and give you that, I guess, maybe a little push you needed to follow kind of what your calling is, essentially, even if you don't know it at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it was a different era as well. Like, I'm not old, certainly.
Right.
But, obviously we didn't have social media.
Mm-hmm.
The world was smaller than it had been, but it wasn't as closely connected as it is today.
Right.
And so, now it's great. You have, young guys and girls that have so much information at their fingertips as
Mm-hmm.
they're coming up, even as athletes, that it makes for an environment where there's so much opportunity
Right.
For coaches to get information, explore opportunities, go to different places.
Right.
I mean, we said kind of off air a little bit. I mentioned how I coached in Quebec for 10 years,
Right.
just about at the high school and CJEP level before coming out west.
Mm-hmm.
And that it's kind of like a black box over there, and really, that's kind of what it was like everywhere. Like you came up in your spot, and it wasn't really a thing that people
Right.
went away
Yeah, that's
to
true.
kind of chase this particular profession.
Right.
And I would say even in my own case, I had some stops and starts early on. I remember clearly, being in, our living room, and, telling my parents, like, all right, when I finish this undergraduate degree, I want to go be a graduate assistant. I'd been going down to the States. I worked camps in the States
Mm-hmm.
for years. Like, I would just go spend 7-8 weeks every summer,
Really?
traveling around New England and down the East Coast.
Damn.
And just working camp camp after camp. It was the camp era, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so, and then meeting coaches and this, that, and the next. And so, and my parents, as much as they loved the game, and they didn't come up understanding how that was a thing, right?
Right. Yeah.
That's not a thing. Like, people don't go and do that. They go be a teacher, right?
Yeah.
Like,
They don't go be a
you can go
graduate
and
assistant.
yeah, you could teach and coach at a high school or whatever the case is. Like, that made a
Right.
lot of sense to them.
Right.
And so, I can't say that they were like actively dissuading me, but they were like, yeah, I'm not sure what that means, right? And
Little subtle hints here and there to
yeah,
maybe guide you, redirect you again to something that makes a little more sense to them.
to them, right?
Yeah.
And so, it kind of, it changed the trajectory of the path that, that I ended up taking, right? As a young coach, and then moving on into later years of my career so far. It just,
Right.
it changed things, right? And different interactions changed things. Like, for example, I was working a camp in Connecticut,
Okay.
and on the campus of St. Thomas More prep school.
Mm-hmm.
And the coach at one of the head coaches of that camp, he was the head coach at Stony Brook.
Okay. Yep.
Which was just transitioning. Like, he was the coach that transitioned them into Division One.
Okay.
And I remember coming up to him. I was a young guy, and I said, "Coach, like, I got this dream, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I want to coach, in somewhere."
Mm-hmm.
And his response was kind of like, "Yeah, that's not going to happen." Yeah. And,
All right then.
And he listed off a litany of reasons, right?
Yeah.
You didn't go to a big school down in the States, for undergrad. You're not kind of connected in. Like, you're kind of basically saying, like, that road's going to be super difficult.
Right. Yeah.
And it's true. It has been. I've had to make different decisions at times that, just, like, that trajectory has just been hard, right? It's not, I don't have the kind of like the tree of, I didn't GA under X, Y, or Z, and then that led to, like, adobo, and then that led to something else, and that led to something else. Like, I'm fortunate, blessed to have some great mentors, but we basically had to grind it out, right?
Yeah.
Like, and so he wasn't wrong.
Right. That's true.
And it was going to be more difficult, but those are the interactions that we have. And so, for young coaches out there, today, it's just a different world, right? Like, they have so much more exposure to opportunity and different ways of connecting with coaches, all over the world, right? And you see that during the pandemic. So all the different clinics and whatnot. So anyway, like, it's been an interesting journey so far. Certainly, I'm not done. And, but getting into it was
the toughest part.
It was like, I wanted to do that. I found a lot of satisfaction from remaining in the game, and being involved with teams and being in that environment. And so we just put our nose down and found a way to make it happen.
And for a young coach too, to hear basically someone say your dream is not going to happen, it's got to be tough to hear. And I think a lot of kids now, if they heard that, they would just buckle. They would just crumble and give up. I think.
You know what? You're right. I think, well, you're right about it being tough.
Yeah.
And you got to turn around and then decide how much you want it.
Right. You got to look yourself in the mirror and have that conversation with yourself. And how much do you want it? What
are you willing to do?
Right. And if you hear the tough news like that, or someone say it's not as easy as you think it's going to be, if you can't even bring yourself to have that conversation with yourself, I think you've already answered your question. You clearly don't
Yeah,
want it enough.
yeah, yeah. That's
Yeah.
right. And I think that we all need to get put into that spot where
Mm-hmm.
we need to evaluate truly what our priorities are. Ask ourselves the why we want to do something,
Right.
and then we have to decide whether or not we're actually going to chase it.
Yep.
And then being put on the spot like that, and being told in honest terms,
Right.
we all need that. Like,
Like
we
a whole
need that,
100%.
right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times we have, um, like, we avoid the difficult conversations that need to happen,
Right.
for ourselves or with other people, whether that's in family, friendships, or within your team.
Mm-hmm.
And radical honesty is not an easy thing.
No.
And Frank Martin, I heard Frank Martin, say something, not so much about tough love, but it's about love tough.
Right.
And I thought that made a lot of sense. And if you love somebody, you tell them the truth, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
the coach in the States, and obviously my parents loved me, and the coach in the States, I mean, I won't say he loved me, but like, he had an interest in me. He was
Right.
supportive of me.
Right.
He kept bringing me down to the camp. He helped me get into other camps. Like, he's not a bad guy in this story.
No.
Uh,
It's just
but he was willing to tell me the truth.
right.
And I'm thankful for that, because that prepared me, even if it's just a little bit, that prepared me for the grind that was to come.
Right. And it's the truth that it's the truth. Like, it's the nature of the industry. It's not just a straight line from A to B, from B to C, from C to D. There's going to be those detours where it's not as easy, and you got to put your nose down and just put in the. And like you said, that was the era of camps. You didn't have social media to connect, so you had to go to camps and connect with people. Now you can send them a message on Twitter, Instagram, email, and that's it. You don't even have to meet them in person.
Yeah.
And the resources now are so much farther advanced than they were then, or even just around in general. Like, there's not many people going to camps now just to meet coaches and network. It's all digital, and that's it.
Yeah. I don't think that's entirely a bad thing. I think
No.
it's almost like we've democratized access.
Right.
And that's super important, right? Like,
Right.
you want more access means more opportunity for more people, and that's a
Right.
good thing.
Yeah.
The flip side, though, is that people aren't necessarily thinking that it's going to take more than 140 characters,
Right.
or to build like an actual rapport or reputation,
Right.
or whatever the case is.
Mm-hmm.
So it maybe the quick cuts, right? Like the
Yep.
highlight reel, is it only gets you so far.
Right.
So those opportunities to connect with coaches, spend time together,
Mm-hmm.
be in the same space together,
Yep.
talk, share ideas. I mean, you read all these stories, and you hear older coaches talk about how they'd be moving salt and pepper shakers around,
Yeah.
like just talking about different schemes or whatever the case is, or how to manage situations with players. And
Right.
I mean, I love that stuff, right?
Yeah.
I love that stuff. And I always found my American side of me,
Yeah.
Craved that.
Right.
Craved that to an extent that I didn't always find where I was here in Canada.
Right.
Back then. And I found it much more when I was in the States, or,
Mm-hmm.
So I can't, yeah, I don't think it's the same anymore. I think there's
Right.
just so much better information, better coaching across the board in our
Right.
country.
Mm-hmm.
That there are these great conversations happening left, right, and center.
Yeah.
And I think, digital technology is a big part of that, because before those conversations were happening, but, a schlub like me from Quebec City couldn't access those.
Right. Right.
How was I supposed to get into those conversations? They were happening with all of the great coaches.
Right.
And it was difficult for us to kind of start those at our level on the come up. And
Yep.
now, everybody can be a part of it, and I think that's great.
Right. And we mentioned too before we came on with the pandemic and all the clinics that are out there now too, the online clinics that have seemingly popped up everywhere that give you those resources, those connections, them moving the salt and pepper shakers on tables just through digital. And
Yeah.
now for those who couldn't be a part of those conversations before, they're right there for you. And like you said, everybody's kind of better off for it. And yeah, everybody can learn kind of from the same resources now, which is fantastic.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's been you wish we were never in this situation, obviously, but
Mm-hmm.
if we have to be, then we have to find ways to try and make some positive outcomes
Make
emerge
the
from
best
it.
of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and that would be, I think, definitely one of the areas that I think our game anyway has benefited from during this time.
Right.
Just increased access. Um, One of the things I do is I remotely connect with coaches and coaching staffs and all over the world in different
Mm.
places, and we just talk about the game or talk about different aspects
Right.
of the profession. And I learn so much from those interactions that it's been a lot of fun
Yeah.
and very rewarding
Yeah.
for myself as well. Not just, I think we're all having these conversations in different ways
Right.
more often now, not just the ones that are public, but the
Right.
ones that are behind the scenes, on group chats or whatever the case is. I think that's just really cool.
Yeah. It's interesting to see how the game kind of just brings everyone together and like the constant learning because everybody has something they can teach someone else. And I think, like you said, just the constant learning and connecting with people and kind of learning from what they do and they're learning from what you do and just the conversations. There's a lot of them behind the scenes that will never make it public, which I think just having those conversations a lot more too is just shows just how far the game has come and how far it's going.
Yeah, yeah. I'm excited for the future.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for myself, like where we started was getting into coaching.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think there are more opportunities to get into coaching now, but that it's it's a difficult profession in our country to survive in,
Right.
and a lot of people don't even get started,
No, that's true.
let alone survive.
Yeah.
So
Because
we have to count our blessings every day,
mm-hmm.
uh, even to do to have any sort of contact with the game,
Mm-hmm.
with our athletes, with the
Right.
community. And it's, I mean, as you're going through every single program,
Yeah.
the exact number of how many programs there are in the country,
Yeah.
and it's but a fraction of what there are in the States.
Mm-hmm.
um, and so you have a natural sort of uh, streamlining,
Yeah.
and sometimes I think the limited number of opportunities in our country means that more good coaches don't get opportunities,
Right.
and that hurts the game,
Mm-hmm.
because we could be learning so much, the game could be improving so much,
Mm-hmm.
if we had more opportunity, because I think there are plenty of incredible coaches out there
Mm-hmm.
that don't have opportunities.
Right.
And so it's, whereas in the States, I mean, there's so many schools,
Right.
and
It's
so
crazy.
many outlets,
Yeah.
right? There's probably an over demand,
Probably.
right, than for the supply.
Yeah.
And up here, I think it's the reverse. I think we have an oversupply of really good coaches.
And not enough spots for them.
Yeah, and I'm just very, very lucky that I've somehow slipped under the radar this long, and still been able to stay in the game before anybody realizes.
It's it's crazy. Like you look at like there's 112 schools in Canada, and most of them have men's and women's. Some have one or the other. And there's like 8 schools that have one or the other. There's 353 Division One in the States. We're not even a third of Division One.
Yeah.
And I know there's quite a few coaches that have to work a second job in Canada just to coach. And there's not, can't live off it. And so you're taking a second job, and coaching is still well over probably 40 hours a week. When you look at film, recruiting, practice, games, it's just not sustainable. And like you said, not a lot of people don't even get started. They want to get in the door. They see what it takes and what it entails, and then they quit before it even gets started. And the opportunities are just limited. And you see
you
a
go
lot
back
of
30 or 40 years.
Mhm.
Sorry to cut you off, but
No, it's all right.
if you go back 30 or 40 years, or we're 2020 now, maybe back into the 70s probably is where, so whatever that is, 50 years ago, right? Like the 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 landscape down south looked a lot more like our landscape.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever whatever the date is, but whenever the big money came into football and men's basketball in particular,
Mm-hmm.
it just changed the dynamic so much.
Right.
And the NCAA looks a lot more like the CIS if you take away the P5 and
Right.
and D2, D3 in particular, JUCO, like that looks a lot like what we have in Canada, right?
Yeah.
But the P5 situation is just so incredibly out of balance and that's what we see on TV,
right?
Because you could go back and you read about coaches that are now like Rick Barnes, at Tennessee, just picked up the big commit, like he's got to be in his 70s, right?
It's got to be up there. Yeah.
I mean, I remember point blank reading about when he started up, he was driving a forklift at night, in the office at 6 a.m, sleeping 2 hours, 3 hours, and, going to drive the forklift because he was making $500 to be,
right.
I don't know what that would be in today's money, but still not that much.
No.
And, the influx of money just hasn't happened in Canada.
No.
And so, a lot of the landscape still looks like that, but
and it doesn't look like any influx of money is coming to Canadian basketball anytime soon, which is another issue that we could get into a rabbit hole on as well. Just the sheer growth of the game in Canada. I think there's so much that can be done, but nobody's really doing anything about it. And that's what I could go on for a while. Rick Barnes is 66.
Oh, there you
go. Just turned 66 last month. But yeah, that's crazy. Like, you see that now. People have full-time jobs on top of being a full-time coach because the money's just not there. And as much they do it, a lot of them do it because they love the game. Sure. They're not doing it for the money, because if they were, they wouldn't be living anywhere.
No,
a lot of them. And
you don't do this for the money.
No, 100%.
In fact, you don't do anything for the money. If you're doing something for the money,
you're doing it wrong.
You have the wrong, in my opinion, you have the wrong baseline.
Your priorities are all out of whack if you go to work. Obviously, the money helps you live and whatever, as long as you make enough to have to live with your basic necessities.
I mean, I think the key thing here is that our world is about people.
Right.
And so if you're doing something in a context where you're working with people and you're working for people, but you have this other focus, then in my opinion, you might be tempted to think about them as commodities rather than people.
Right.
And that's not good. You don't want that.
No.
you as a coach, we have we have a responsibility and a duty of care to our athletes, no matter who they are or what ages they are.
Mhm.
And the reason that we do this, uh, when the financial return is not great.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter even that when you're a full-time coach in Canada. I mean, there are some jobs that pay very well, even at the CIS level, and there are
Yeah.
lots of jobs that don't pay that well
Yeah.
at the CIS level, and in the CCAA, there are very few full-time jobs, and
Mhm.
and so it's really not about that. It's about the impact and the influence that you can have on the lives, in the lives of other people,
Right.
trying to trying to be trying to be helpful and
Mhm.
walk alongside them as they go, especially at the college and university level when they're at this really important period of their lives.
Right. Big transition, trying to figure out what they want to do with their life, where they kind of fit into society, and it's on coaches and everybody to kind of help them figure out what their calling is, what the writing is on their wall, to kind of get them into the next phase of their life, whether it's basketball,
I
professional
remember
world,
the first
whatever.
time. I remember the first time somebody paid me money to coach basketball, and I thought I hit like the lotto. And I was like, "People are paying me to do this. This is crazy." And because I mean, you do it because you love it,
Right.
and you find ways. You drive a forklift at night,
Yep.
or you know, and obviously the world is expensive, and we have lives, and
Yep.
people's family situations are different. And
Yep.
I was very, very, very privileged to grow up where I grew up, and in the family that I grew up in, and in the situation that I grew up in, where you know I I was able to say, like, I can do that. I had two working parents. We were,
Mhm.
in a solidly middle class type of situation.
Yep.
So I mean, that's the way that that's the way the it came up for me.
Yep.
And I realized not everyone's like that.
Mhm.
Not everyone is in that same situation, and so I think ultimately we 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 go from where we are towards where we want to be, and no matter where it is we start, as long as we're moving forward, I think that's what we have to keep our focus on.
Exactly. You mentioned earlier, you're kind of in your coaching journey, your leadership journey, you've seen your share of places over the years. You coached in India, Australia.
Here's the joke. The joke is when someone especially my buddies, when they're like, "Is there a place you haven't coached? Like, how does that work?" It's
Would
like,
it be easier to list the places you haven't coached? Would that be a bit quicker of a list?
no,
You, India,
yeah,
Australia,
yeah.
coached in Vancouver for a bit with the Titans in the IBL. You, this isn't going to be in any order, by the way. I'm just
No, that's fine.
ramming them off. St. Mary's in Calgary.
Yeah,
You had a stint at Olds, not in coaching, but you were at Olds College for a bit. You coached at Cape Breton for 2 years. Prairie College, the Pilots. Uh, what else am I missing here? Keanu. You did Alberta basketball, the U15 team. Did I hit everything? Did I miss any?
uh, uh,
If that's just in the last like 12 years, that's before,
yeah,
that's after the 10 years in Quebec.
yeah, yeah. I
Let me
I,
see.
I I think the best way for me to put that is, or to sort of start talking about all those experiences, is just to say how, like, truly I'm grateful for all of the experiences and each of the experiences
Yeah.
that I've had. I like I said, I coached in Quebec City. I started there. I
Mm-hmm.
coached at Séminaire Saint François, St. Patrick's High School,
Mm-hmm.
Cégep de Lévis-Lauzon. When I went back to teach at my alma mater, CEGEP, for a bit, my one of my former coaches brought me in to coach the St. Lawrence team
Mm-hmm.
at St. Lawrence, Champlain St. Lawrence. While I was there, which was great. Like, I have a lot of I have a lot of love for my home and my, the places that I'm connected to
Hmm.
back home, and that's where it's all started.
Right.
And growing up in Quebec City as an Anglophone in Quebec City, the likelihood of you leaving the city is pretty high
Yeah.
once you hit university.
Yeah.
So then you move to Montreal or you move to Sherbrooke,
Yeah.
if you're staying in the province and you want to attend an English school. And so I went to Bishops, and
Hmm.
um, I was an assistant at Champlain Lennoxville and coached at Sherbrooke, and like it's just been worked with Basketball Quebec, and
Hmm.
um, head coached the Basketball Quebec summer camp with
Okay.
250 campers, 25 coaches back in the day when that was a big thing. I was a lot like, this is what I mean.
Yeah.
Like I think back, there was no way I was ready for that. Like there was just no way, you
Yeah.
know. Like, I had done nothing up until that point.
Hmm.
And I mean, when those situations arose, I just grabbed it with two hands and
Yeah.
I dove into it fully, and I just did my honest best.
Yeah.
And I've tried to keep that mindset as you compile experience and success and failure.
Hmm.
I think it's important not to get um, into a mindset where you repeatedly do the same sort of things.
Right.
You have to dive into that place and into
Hmm.
that situation. And
Yeah.
when I came west, I met my wife out here. She's from North Burnaby.
Okay.
I was an assistant coach at Simon Fraser with Scott Clark
Yeah.
at that time as well. And you know, it's 6 degrees of separation,
Right.
right? I'm a random guy. I I email up Coach Clark,
Yeah.
and who already back then, was a great tactician of the game, and
Right.
um, and I said, hey, like I had a couple references from some coaches in Quebec City, like Coach Paiement and other sort of leading coaches in Quebec,
Right.
and I walk in to his, hey, like any way I can help out, um, and uh, and so I ended up helping out
Yeah.
Coach, and I remember sitting in the office, and he called me one evening. It was like 7:30, 8 o'clock. I'm sitting, me and uh, Clint Schneider, who's now the SFU head men's soccer coach.
Okay.
He was the assistant soccer coach at the time, and we shared an office. And I'm sitting in the room, and I'm watching tape or doing academics or whatever the case was. I remember the phone rings, and coach says, "You're going to get a call from someone that wants you to go to India." And and so I thought, is he pranking me? Is that what's going on? Is this like
Yeah.
hazing? And sure enough, turns out an alum had contacted him to go,
Yeah.
and he couldn't go because it was the middle of the season,
Right.
uh, and so because it was to be in December, right?
Okay.
And so anyway, so next thing my wife, we were newly married,
Okay.
2008. In December of 2008, off we go, and we're in India for 7 weeks or something like that,
Wow.
and working with national level athletes and coaches, and
Yeah.
we're just, I mean,
Just like that.
yeah, there's no reason for that to happen, really.
No, just happy
Just
to be mid-season and
and coach was like, go, right? Like,
yeah.
so I missed the San Diego trip,
Hmm.
the December San Diego trip that year, and I missed some January games,
Yeah.
and then came back. And Coach Clark was also the person who got me connected in with the Titans,
Okay.
um, because again, like I'm out here, I'm nobody here in British Columbia,
Right.
um, and but I'm working with him, and he said, hey. I'm on this advisory board for this team,
Hmm.
And John Mara, a guy by the name of John Mara, whose sons both played, you know, really good basketball
Right.
players, um, and he's starting this sort of minor league team, and he's looking for a GM. And so, all right, I
Mhm.
contact John, and the next thing you know, I'm trying to build a minor league pro team. I mean, what do I know about minor league basketball? Uh,
Jeez.
Nothing. I know nothing.
Yeah.
Uh, but again, like you just dive in, and I
Yeah.
had so much fun. We didn't have a name, we didn't have colors, we didn't have players, we didn't have a coach,
Wow.
uh, and we ended up, Coach Chambers, Richie Chambers,
Hmm.
who is like one of the goats of BC coaching,
Hmm.
uh, at the time was the junior national women's head coach.
Okay. Yeah.
And so we hired him. Like he was
Oh,
going to
okay.
coach the Titans.
Wow.
And it turns out he had a really bad accident a couple of years prior. His back was pretty banged up in a car accident.
Oh, okay.
And it was acting up on him. And his doctor just said, look, like you can do one or the other, but you can't do both.
Mm.
And obviously he chose the national.
Right. Yeah.
And so, Mr. Mara, um, he went through a process to select a different coach, and
Hmm.
he asked me if I was going to do it and if I wanted to do it, and I said yes. And the next thing you know, I'm not only signing these players, but now I have to coach them, and there you go. So that now I'm on court and I'm coaching pros.
Right.
A bunch of former All Canadians, a bunch of former D1 guys. We had a guy who had been coached by Coach Knight at Texas Tech,
Wow.
and I'm here. I am,
Yeah.
and ultimately it comes down to, I think, like, again, you have to take whatever situation you're in,
Hmm.
throw yourself at it,
Right.
and and try your best, work as hard as you can,
Yeah.
work as smart as you can, and be genuine about what you're trying to do. And there you
Yeah.
go. That's how you end up in India, apparently, and that's how you end up,
Apparently.
coaching Titans, and that it's just on and on, like
Right.
each different opportunities. And we've had things happen along the way, like we went to Australia.
Hmm.
Well, we went to Australia the first time after Vancouver,
Hmm.
just kind of on vacation, and we connected with the community down there, and
Yep.
you know Mike McNeil and Coach Shields
Yep.
obviously had a really close connection with. And so he would say, hey, look, like, contact these guys, and it opened opportunities for me to have conversation with people. Can I come watch practice? Can I do this,
Hmm.
do that? And the next thing you know, we had some opportunities to stay, and we were, like I said, newly married and
Yeah.
no kids.
Hey, that makes it a lot easier.
We decided
Yeah.
to stay in Australia, and the next thing you know, I'm living in Western Australia and coaching down there, and
Huh.
just an incredible series of coincidence and opportunity. And
Hmm.
I try and tell my players, and or young players or groups or whomever it is that asks this sort of question, it's just like, listen, you don't know
Right.
when the opportunity is going to present itself,
Take it.
but if you're prepared,
Hmm.
and you have confidence because you're prepared, then when that window opens or the
Hmm.
door opens, and it might just be a crack,
Right. Yeah.
ready. And and so there we were, and we came back at that point after a year. We were negotiating down there to stay,
Hmm.
and talking about making decisions for money. I mean, I think that was us being young, me being probably immature at that
Right.
point, and not taking the opportunity to stay there
Hmm.
because I wasn't at the right number, right?
Hmm.
And it wasn't even all that much, the difference, but I was adamant. And we could have easily stayed down there at that time, and we ended up in Calgary, and I
Hmm.
was an athletic director.
Yeah.
um, And luckily in my past in Quebec, when I was a director of basketball at a private school on the South Shore of Montreal
Mm-hmm.
called Collège Chalawan,
Mm-hmm.
I was an associate athletic director there, and so I had some experience,
Right.
exposure to that world.
Mm-hmm.
And here we were there, and that experience was a real interesting one, kind of starting up a program and transitioning it
Right.
to the level. And that I think the experience of starting basically a startup in the Titans,
Right.
which had like if that was today, like that would have been a CEBL team,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it's the same sort of grouping,
Mm-hmm.
and which is a fantastic. Like I'm so happy that league is there,
Yes.
and I really really encourage people to put eyeballs on that league and
Mm-hmm.
to support the teams. It's really good basketball, and it's really important, I think, to the development of our game for there to
100%.
be a CEBL
Yeah.
or something like it. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
affiliated with Basketball Canada and in that pathway. So
Right.
anyway, yeah, man, like that experience of running that startup then got me ready to basically run a startup athletic department, more or
Right.
less.
Yeah.
And it just kind of it goes from there.
Looking back at when you started and you had that conversation with the Stony Brook coach to where you are now, do you have any idea that this is how you saw your career going in coaching? Is it
No
anywhere
idea.
close to what you had dreamed of?
No.
No, I didn't think so. I think that
Like
was.
dream,
Mm-hmm.
like you come up, if you want to be a coach, you eventually I made the realization that I had to leave Quebec.
Right.
And that's not because the system in Quebec is broken.
No.
Not at all. It's because at the end of the day, to do what I really wanted to do, which was to coach at a university,
Okay.
there are only 5 of them,
Right.
and
Yeah, you're limited.
at the time, coaches had been in place for 20 plus years.
Right.
So there's like entire generations of coaches were basically like passed over, right? Like
Right. Yeah.
they went through their sort of window
Yeah.
without there being opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it became clear I'd have to leave Quebec. And so, I did, and I was, in political science and
Right.
in my academic pathway as well. And in fact, I mean, I thought I was on a way towards, a PhD program, and
Mm-hmm.
just, that was the fallback, right?
Right.
Which looking today at the academic market, that's not a great fallback to have, because it's
No,
not a good market for academics.
not at all.
So, yeah, kind of maybe dodged a bullet on that one.
Maybe.
But, when you had this picture, right, of what you wanted to achieve, and it's important to know what the outcome is
Mm-hmm.
to identify, some steps and a path to take in order to try and achieve it.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me at that time, that was it.
Mm-hmm.
And, I grew up in that sort of environment where,
Right.
the type of institution and the type of environment for me is like that liberal arts type of vibe, right?
Mm-hmm.
And where the class sizes are controlled.
Mm-hmm.
There's a connectivity on campus.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of my groove. That's why I loved my experience at Bishop's so much.
Yeah.
And I'm very proud to say that I graduated from Bishop's. I got a great education. My department there, our faculty was phenomenal. I was very well prepared when I got to graduate school.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that that environment just was so helpful for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so that, that was what I was kind of looking for
Right.
as a coach. And like it or not, there's just not that many of them
No.
in Canada, let alone in Quebec. And so off you go.
Yeah.
Um, and then I think it was being open to the universe, right? Like you just kind
Right.
of, when coach calls me and says someone's going to call you to go to India, you kind of have to be like,
Okay.
I'm gonna be open to that, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm gonna be open to that.
Right.
And hey, like we got a chance to stay in Australia. I got to be kind of open to that. And
Right.
sometimes that leads you to make decisions that, in hindsight, maybe ended up not being the best.
Right.
Uh, in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
But when we went back to Australia in 2012,
Mm-hmm.
We really loved our first experience, and so when the opportunity came to go back, we thought, let's do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, of course, our oldest, who's now 8, was going to be born and was
So
2 months when he moved down there.
okay. Jeez.
And so we're new parents, first time parents on the
Right.
other side of the planet, no family, no support. Um, and so that was a real struggle for
Yeah.
us. And we had a tragic ending to that season where I coached like a Pro 2 women's team, and we lost 2 athletes in a car accident
Oh.
hours after our last game of the season. And we had one game, like it was a success. We weren't making the playoffs, but it was successful by the standards of that club.
Mm-hmm.
When we won our first game, the paper had a headline. It was like 1,000-something days since the last win for the team.
Oh.
And so it had been a struggle. But we that was obviously something that you're not prepared for as a coach.
Right.
And as a leader of that group. And there are a lot of stories I could tell about that particular incident, and the aftermath of that. But getting back to your question, I want to say that being open to the opportunities as they come, that put us into different situations, and it put me into contact with people that I could rely on. And so that night, when that happened, I emailed, called. The time zones were kind of, to me reaching. I got Coach Clark, Coach Allison McNeil, who shared some experience from her time at Oregon, where she had lost a teammate, and because I was like, man, what am I supposed to do here? Like, I don't know what to do.
Right.
And so we got through that experience, and to this day, that group of athletes and coaches, those are my people. We are very close, with a pretty good chunk of them to this day. And, but it was kind of being open that hey, would you like to coach this team? Would you like to GM this pro team, minor league pro team?
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah. And that's not, I think it all kind of ties together, and we had a vision of kind of what I wanted to achieve in this profession. And it's been a road with twists and turns, but at every stop, incredibly important relationships and incredibly important opportunities for me to dive in. And sometimes it's been successful and sometimes it hasn't been successful, either with individuals or, competitively. But you throw yourself in and you do the best with the hand that you're dealt.
Right.
And then you kind of go from there. And I think that's one of the reasons why, even though we wouldn't have imagined this path, that the path has still been something that I can own and really, really, learn from.
Right. And I think too, that's a big thing, is just take everything in stride. Just go into it with an open mind, who knows what's going to come from it, good, bad, or otherwise. But you don't know until you do it. And if you get an opportunity and you go in with blinders on and say, I'm not going to take it, who knows where that could have led you, connected you to, helped you learn, helped you grow, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of, especially the younger kids. I had this in school too, like in first year sport management at Brock. They ask you what you want to do. Everybody knows. And by the first week, you've changed your mind.
Sure.
And if you go in with your blinders on and people, I think it was like 60% of our class wanted to work with Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment.
Right.
You look at that in a group of 100 people, there's 60 people that you're going to graduate with at the same time, vying for 4 jobs in one company.
Sure.
If you don't go in with an open mind and be willing to change, you're going to get passed over. It's going to be like the coaching in Quebec. Generations of coaches get passed over because they've been there for 20, 30 years. And if you don't have an open mind, who knows what opportunities are going to pass you by because you weren't willing to say, you know what, let's do it. Let's see what happens. And
yeah,
sometimes
and,
you got to do that.
Again, like there's an incredible amount of, luck that's involved.
Oh, 100%.
And also like very privileged to, have the ability to say, yeah, let's try that. Right. And so I recognize that. And that's why, like, when I encourage younger, when I talk to older coaches and I say young, like, yo, you're a young coach. You're a young coach. You know that, right?
Right.
And so younger coaches
right.
Is like, when you come into contact with people that, are hungry for learning, hungry for opportunity, like extend a hand, and I think that's one of the things that we are doing better and better across the board. I think we're more willing to extend a hand, and we're more willing to, and it doesn't always work out, right? Like it doesn't always work out, and it's not like you obviously still have a job to do, and it's not just about that. But when you have the opportunity to extend a hand and try to lift somebody else up and give them an opportunity that they might not otherwise have,
right?
Where it goes, what it does, like you don't know. But if you see somebody that seems to have the right mix of, interest, passion, dedication, willingness to work, responsiveness, then see what you can do to help, right?
Yeah.
And then it lifts everybody up to give these opportunities, and by working together, we can create more opportunities for more people.
Right.
And ultimately, that's what it's about, right?
Yeah. You mentioned you did your education at Bishop's, and then you went out to Vancouver Island University, did your master's in
sustainable leisure management. Yeah.
Sustainable leisure management.
I loved being in that program, actually. Like it's a really neat institution, really neat institution. My experience there during my time there was that I felt an authenticity about it.
Okay.
And I thought that was really cool. Like the culture that I was in contact with was really open and grounded, and I thought that was really cool. So, and the faculty in that department, my peer students, and it was all really really interesting. And I thought that the way that leadership and leisure, so it was a bit of a different take, right? Like
right, yeah,
on sports, recreation, and that
Mhm.
sort of thing.
Right.
Because again, like as a coach, I think our number one our number one objective is to try and lift people up.
Excuse me. Mhm.
Our bless you. Our our particular arena is basketball,
Right.
right? Um, but and competitive sport.
Mhm.
But you can learn how to better lift people up,
Yeah.
by studying community recreation,
Mhm.
by studying demographic initiatives for seniors
Right.
or new immigrants
Mhm.
or for rural communities or for whatever. And all of these different sort of aspects,
Mhm.
sport delivery systems, my time in Australia really opened my eyes both times
Mhm.
in different ways, working with state governments, working with state sport associations, working with local clubs, regional clubs, high performance programs, like what they call domestic programs
Okay.
at the very local grassroots level. You learn from everything,
Right.
and I learned a lot from my time out at VIU, and I'm very thankful to have been there for that time. And I learned a lot, just as I learned a lot from each of my
Right.
different environments that I was in,
Yeah.
as a professional, but
Mhm.
also as a um, like as a learner, right?
Mhm.
Like as I was coming up, being at camps, being at clinics,
Mhm.
talking to coaches, going to watch practice. I mean, I remember back in the day, Champlain St. Lambert
Mhm.
was, in the heyday where they were coming out of Quebec every year and they
Right.
just had a tremendous program.
Mhm.
I would go watch practice. I was a high school coach on the South Shore of Montreal.
Yeah.
And I would drive to St. Lambert. I would sit in the stands and I would watch practice. I would watch Coach DeAngelis and his staff, and I would just take notes and I would do the same,
Yeah.
if I could get into Coach Hercak's practice or, wherever I could get into, I would just go watch practice. I was trying to be a learner,
Mhm.
and the same situation I think is applicable whether you're an actual student, like if you're
Mhm.
an actual either graduate student, undergraduate student, um, your title is student, or if you're just a student of the game or student of the profession and the art of coaching
Mhm.
and leadership. You can learn a lot
Mhm.
from all these different environments. And
Right.
I know that I took a lot away from my time at VIU. I took a lot away from my time in Australia. And I think our Canadian system is improving all the time. And I think we have a keen sense of that need for improvement. And
Mhm.
I think that's really exciting to see.
Yeah.
And hopefully, even in the conversations that I have with different people, or the work that I do, or the work I do with different student athletes or different coaches,
Mhm.
coaching staffs, or whatever. Hopefully, I'm like a very, very, very tiny part of that in a positive way.
You mentioned learning from like the recreation side. It's so broad, and everybody is impacted by recreation in some way. Like it affects every demographic, regardless of where you live, what sport it is, money, whatever. Recreation is endless. Everybody may have a different definition, but
Yeah,
it impacts everybody's life in some way. And you mentioned learning from that in a competitive sport atmosphere. There's so much you can take from it on, like you said, the demographics of immigrants or seniors or whatever. There's so much you can learn because it's just so broad and it can literally go anywhere.
one of the main takeaways for me from the academic study of leisure, um, like when you try to figure out why someone is doing something,
Mhm.
you know, their motivation,
Right.
and how to get them into the sweet spot of where, that like that flow, get into that, you know,
Yeah.
um, I can never pronounce his name, but the concept of flow,
Mhm.
where you're in that spot where it's not too easy, so there's no boredom.
Right.
It's not hard, so you're not discouraged.
Right.
It's just like a little bit beyond your fingertips. You can kind of touch it, right? Like
Right.
you're almost
Right.
there. And the takeaway for me and the way that I apply it into my coaching has been really instrumental in framing, helping me frame, um, the way that I get at trying to understand the why people, what is their motivation? Why does my athlete
Mhm.
even want to play this game?
Right.
It goes deeper than I want an education, or I want to try and play professionally, or I just love the game. I love to compete, or
Right.
there are deeper seated, more powerful reasons,
Mhm.
that if we can connect with as a coach, it helps us better assist and facilitate their success.
Mhm.
And then the idea of getting them, like, even through their individual development plans or team
Mhm.
development plans, into that state where it's not too easy, it's not too
Right.
hard, it's just that right spot, and you're constantly trying to get them to touch what's just beyond their fingertips. And when they do,
Mhm.
you move it, and you
Right.
keep doing that.
Mhm.
um, and so some really important takeaways. And the way that those learnings were applied in the context of leisure, it's the same way for competitive sport.
Right.
And we might call it something different, and we might, but the same, in the academic literature,
Mhm.
it's the same concepts that are coming up, whether you're talking about coaching and high performance, or you're talking about recreation and more leisure activities.
Right.
And so for me, there was a direct applicability.
Mhm.
And also the world of youth sports.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
you know I try to work as much as possible with youth sport organizations,
Mhm.
and either their boards or their coaching staffs, and even their athletes, not just from a basketball technical development perspective, but
Right.
more so from an angle of, like, why are we doing this? How are we doing this?
Mhm.
What is the transformational impact of,
Yeah.
are we transformational, transactional, like that
Yeah.
dyad type idea? And that's
Mhm.
important to me.
Yeah.
And you know we really, you come when you examine the business of youth sports, we kind of know it anecdotally that there are not always sort of the best outcomes for young
Right.
people,
Right.
uh, and the data supports that.
Mhm.
And so I think it's on us to intervene.
Mhm.
So when I see really good people, um, trying their hardest to run really good programs
Mhm.
that truly benefit, um, the young people that are involved in that program, I just try to help,
Right.
if I can. And so, that's another thing that came out of that period of time, on the island.
Mhm.
Um, and the island's a pretty special place, man. Like,
Yeah.
it's a beautiful part of the country, and we loved living there, and we love that whole experience. And there's been a direct carryover to what I do. Uh,
And now you're going to be a visitor in the gym.
yeah, I'm looking
It'll be
forward to that.
interesting.
Yeah.
Looking at kind of your education, and one last one before we kind of shift into the Douglas men's basketball portion of it all. Looking at kind of your education and all your stops along the way and the various leadership roles that you've had. You mentioned like just the constant learning, the understanding, and progression. What, in your opinion, makes an effective leader?
Well, the secret sauce for leadership is still locked in a vault somewhere,
Yeah, I
right?
was gonna say, yeah,
There's no recipe for that secret sauce, that we can get.
yeah,
Um, I think, in my opinion, based on what I've either experienced or learned and tried to apply in my own experience,
Mm-hmm.
My own professional experience. It starts with a genuine interest and care for people.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is an old line from a TV show, I think, but you know what they call a leader with no followers, and just some dude taking a walk, right?
That's
So
true.
you really need to have an interest in people. You need to care for people, and you need to care about their success. You need to care about their experience. You need to care about them as people.
Right.
Basketball coaches, we coach humans who play basketball.
Right.
We don't coach basketball.
Mm-hmm.
We coach the people,
Right.
and it happens to be basketball.
Right.
That we interact with on a day-to-day basis. So for me, that's where it starts. It starts with a keen sense of how important it has to be to you as a leader,
right,
to love and care for the people under your charge.
Right.
And then I think it moves from that starting point into a place where, like, leadership is not easy, right?
No.
And I'm not saying it's hard, because you have to make decisions that people are going to criticize, and people on the outside are always going to be unaware of the inner workings of what goes on,
Right.
and that's not what makes it hard.
No.
What makes it hard is the time, effort, and energy that you have to invest in your people and in your environment in order to even get to the point where you can think about making a decision.
Right.
Okay. And so to be an effective leader, I think you have to care about people, and then you have to actually work at being a leader.
Yeah.
And so the decisions that you make should not be off the cuff, should not be, random.
Right.
They have to be consistent, and you need, in order to have that credible leadership, you need to be consistent in the way that you make decisions, and the reason you make decisions has to be the same. You have to make, similar types of standards that are, across the board sort of thing. And then you have to be consistent in applying that. And it creates a set of parameters for the people that a leader is responsible for. They understand, right? If you're inconsistent, who am I going to see today? Which Coach P which Coach P am I getting today?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Is it going to be this guy, or is it going to be that guy? Which guy is it going to be? And, I think that it's always a balancing act, in particular if you have a heart for people, you have a heart for people. And so you're very empathetic, and you kind of feel what that other person is feeling. And you have to be resolute enough to be able to do the work, to prepare to make the decision, make the decision, and then move on. And, with let's say dismissing players from a team. I don't think that should be done lightly, unless obviously you are, faced with an acute, behavioral, ethical type of situation, right? But otherwise, you should agonize over that decision. Because if you really brought that person into the program, and invested in them and told them, like, all right, you're my guy now, well, that has to mean something, right?
Yeah.
And so that's a two-way street, obviously, right? Like you,
Mhm.
and if players take advantage of that, then I think, like, as with any leader, you have to, you have to intervene. You can't allow that to happen.
Right.
But it's a balancing act, because you have to get through the process of, reflection and making sure that the decision you're about to make is the correct decision,
Mhm.
but then make the decision, and once it's made, it's made.
Right.
And you move on to the next thing. And it's more difficult, I think, the longer that you are. I think when you're in my case anyway, when I was younger,
Mhm.
I was much more. It was much more black and white, right? Like
Right.
the world as a um, the world as a young guy,
Uh-huh.
everything's simple,
Right.
right?
Right.
The dog's about to work here.
That's all right. Making another appearance.
Making another appearance.
Wants the attention. That's
It's,
okay.
uh, it's it's my wife, so he's happy. He's not gonna bark too
Okay. That's a good bark. Okay.
much. But when you're younger, it's like it's very black and white,
Right.
you know. And I think, in my case anyway, the more you live on Earth, the more you realize that there's a lot less black and white.
Right.
And I think that the quote unquote old school of coaching um, would have it be like very black and white
Right.
on lots of different things, for which black and white is probably not um, it's not reasonable to
Right.
apply that, right?
Hmm.
But it's easy if it's a transactional, very like, look, you play for me, you do what I say. If you do what I say, you're going to get this. If you don't do what I say, you're going to get that. Like that's a very, very easy. The world is black and white.
Right.
That's a lot easier.
Right.
But
Yeah.
if you're really invested in making an impact and being a transformational coach,
Yeah.
okay, well, now you have to care about people. You have to get to know them, and you understand, like, you know, their backstory and their upbringing. And
Hmm.
maybe when you say blue, they don't see blue, right? To them,
Yeah.
there's a different background there, and it's
Right.
your job as the leader to connect with that and to bridge the gap.
Hmm.
And it's not their job to come to you.
No.
It's your job to go to them, and them to come to you, and to meet in the middle. And that's
Hmm.
what makes good environments successful.
Right.
I know in my own past, I've experienced situations where that type of coaching um, was very different, and it made it very difficult
Hmm.
to implement.
Right.
And it's a system it's a philosophy that takes longer
Hmm.
to take root, because relationships take time,
Hmm.
uh, and quick sort of fixes are very transactional.
Right.
That's easy. It's like, look, this, that, the next thing, that's
Hmm.
it.
Yeah.
Um, and the relationship building that it takes just takes time. And,
Hmm.
if you're not in an environment that is genuinely about that, you, are going to struggle
Yeah.
to implement that sort of philosophy as a coach,
Hmm.
which is why, when I, consider opportunities now,
Hmm.
um, I really, and I encourage coaches to think this way. I'm hiring them,
Right.
more so than the other way around.
Hmm.
And what I want to see is, where is this culture? Where is this environment?
Hmm.
What is the Where are the values of this organization?
Hmm.
And do I want to be aligned with that?
Right.
And is what they're saying, face value? Can I take that at face value?
Hmm.
When when push comes to shove, are they still going to believe that?
Right.
uh, and I've been in situations where that was not the case, where it was not truly what they were about.
Hmm.
And then it became difficult for, you know, for the relationship to continue.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, leadership is about people, and it's about investing honest, authentic effort
Mm-hmm.
in building relationship with an individual and building an environment, creating an environment where each person who's a part of that environment is recognized and celebrated and respected and held accountable and
Right.
pushed, challenged. It's like transformational coaching, and this sort of approach is not happy-go-lucky kumbaya. That's not what it is. It is a lot of
No.
radical honesty
Right.
and a lot of accountability,
Mm-hmm.
but it's born out of an interest in the other person's success more so than, look, I need to do this in order for myself to be seen as a good coach.
Right.
I've had losing seasons.
Mm-hmm.
I've had teams that have struggled, and for a bunch of different reasons. I didn't suddenly forget how to coach, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I didn't suddenly, like, all of a sudden I just don't know how to defend a pick and roll. No, it's that how to teach that, or how
Right.
to scheme for that. No. There's a whole bunch of different things that go into winning and losing.
Mm-hmm.
And the most important thing to me is creating an environment where people are invested because they're respected and valued.
Mm-hmm.
And real respect and real value is about accountability and challenging people to be better than where they are right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not kumbaya, happy-go-lucky. That's a lot of, love tough,
Yep.
and radical honesty,
Yep.
and quantifying things, and and then you just take it from there. So I think, fundamentally it's about people, and it's about putting in the work, and it's being willing to have difficult conversations with people.
Right.
And hopefully you have an environment that allows that to happen and allows a relationship to continue,
Right.
as you get people to buy into the credibility and consistency that you have as a leader.
I think those tough conversations too, it has to be a two-way street. You can't be willing to just give those tough conversations and then refuse to hear them when they come your way. I think
Absolutely.
it needs to be two-way street all the way, because as soon as it goes one way and you're bringing the hammer down on everybody else and you won't take any criticism or constructive criticism back, you're digging yourself a hole that you're never going to get out of.
Absolutely. One of the best lessons I learned from one of my former players,
Mm-hmm.
who played for me at Keanu, a kid from Montreal.
Mm-hmm.
And I inherited him from Coach Conley.
Yeah.
When I took on the position there after he left for Nate,
Mm-hmm.
at the time. And, like, he and I did not see eye to eye. And he will, like, he speaks to my teams now.
Okay.
And, he started coaching, and he does different things, and he calls me, and we talk, and we have a really good relationship now. But we did not see eye to eye. In fact, we were at loggerheads.
Okay.
And he played the game in a particular way that I felt was hurting us more than helping us.
Okay.
And so my challenge was, I was always challenging him, to make better decisions,
Mm-hmm.
Challenging him to, X, Y, or Z, whatever it was.
Yep.
And it wasn't until, and this gets back to your point, it wasn't until we were on a road trip in Calgary,
Mm-hmm.
Where we played a game. In fact, we played at St. Mary's.
Okay.
Against my former players.
Oh.
And guys who were really, like, they were really good. Like, Mary's had some good guys.
Yeah.
And one guy went off, Randall Mosca, who ended up at Okanagan for a bit, and
right.
And I mean, we had recruited Randall to Mary's, and then he dropped. I don't know. He must have had 30 on us or something. and and we lost at Mary's, and I think we were the better team, and we lost.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until after that game, it's late. You play at 8:00.
Mm-hmm.
You're done at 10:30.
Yeah.
Get the food. You're back at the hotel. It's like midnight, 12:30 before people are kind of winding down, right?
Right. Yeah.
And we had another game the next day, and it wasn't until that particular player,
Mm-hmm.
saw me sitting in the atrium of the hotel late at night by myself, watching film, taking notes, and preparing for the next day. That the very next morning, as we were going to breakfast, he pulled me aside, put his arm around me, and said something to the effect like, I got you, coach. Like, now I know where you're coming from. Because what to your point, it has to be a two-way street. You ask people to work.
Yeah.
You have to work.
Yeah.
You ask people to have energy. You have to bring energy.
Right.
You ask people to be vulnerable. You have to be vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
You ask people like modeling what it is that you expect and what you think is going to help them succeed and what you expect to see within your program.
Right.
You need to model it. You're the source, right? And so from that point onward, he was receptive, and turns out he became better, and we became better.
Right.
He saw that development and that growth
Mm-hmm.
in the program or in his own game. And so, your point is correct. And, I think that the element of communication is so critical to everything that we do.
Right.
We really have to over communicate.
Yep.
It's better to say, hey, we have no update.
Yeah.
Than to leave people wondering.
Yeah, whether or not there's an update.
And so it's just, and that's a skill, man. Like, you got to develop that, and you have to be comfortable having those conversations. And
right.
Even within our program, I'm encouraging our coaching staff and our players to communicate. And at the beginning, especially now, virtually, like it's kind of guided communication, right?
Right.
You're kind of trying to, throw a firecracker into the fire and try to get some movement, try to get some. You know what? Like, it's been good so far, really good. But the ability to communicate and really dive into the conversations is really, really important.
Right.
And even with other coaches, I'll say this, Tyler. When I was in the AUS, like, the conversations that I had with other coaches at other institutions that were from the outside looking in, that had a coach's eye on and could see the work, could see the development, could see that the scoreboard wasn't demonstrating in terms of the scoreboard was demonstrating improvement, but it wasn't demonstrating wins and losses.
Right.
Like, in terms of wins. But, those relationships and those conversations, that communication with other Coach Plato, Coach Kochalski,
right.
I still message Coach K he's Coach K. Like,
you don't need to say anything else other than that.
I want to hear what he has to say about something. Right? And it's really a blessing for us as coaches if we can have that communication amongst us as coaches. Because we understand what other people are going through. Yeah. Right. And we can see the development. If we play, our first weekend at Dow, my first year at Cape, taking on a team that had, graduated 4 starters and, not much recruitment and taking the job late, and like we were just not very good,
Yeah.
right? And top to bottom, we had some good talent in some
Yeah.
places, but top to bottom, we were just not prepared,
Mhm.
to compete. And our first weekend at Dow was, we lost by 20 something, 32 or something
Oh,
like that.
jeez. Yeah.
And, you know, we played them at the end of the year and lost by 3 at home. And
Okay.
like, you could see progression, right?
Mhm.
Coaches could look at that and say, look, like there's progression.
Mhm.
And, that communication that we had with Coach Plato, like I said, or
Mhm.
whoever they were at that
Yeah.
time, and coaches across the country.
Right.
You know, I remember being at the hotel in Wolfville talking with Chris Cheng on the phone,
Okay. Yeah.
having when he was still at Nipissing, and just having a
Mhm.
conversation. And you know, I know what you're going through.
Yeah.
It's building takes time, doing it the right way takes time, and
Yeah.
you can't short circuit that. And if you have the opportunity to have those conversations, they
Mhm.
matter a lot.
Yep.
You know, and talking with assistant coaches, that matters a lot too.
Yep.
But talking with other head coaches, they've been in your
Right.
shoes. You know,
Exactly.
and so I think having that communication, being willing to say, like right now, we have 65 or 7, I'm not sure exactly how many coaches we have in a WhatsApp group.
Mhm.
And it's just a bunch of coaches from across Canada, the States, overseas. It's not even basketball. This is like soccer, and
That's cool.
just a bunch of different people that
Right.
we brought together and just said, hey, like this is just a place to share ideas.
Mhm.
And so some coaches, it's they're like, look, I'm really struggling with a player, or man, we got smoked last night, or we're coming off 5 wins in a row and we're
Right.
getting complacent, like,
Yeah.
or I haven't seen my kids as much. I feel guilty about that. And it's that vulnerability and, you know, being real with people.
Yeah.
And that's really important. And it's important as a leader,
Mhm.
but it's also important as a follower,
Mhm.
uh, to be willing to put yourself into that situation.
And too that regardless of the sport, there's coaches have gone through very similar things to what you have. Like you just said, if you haven't seen your kids in a while, or win streaks,
Yeah.
complacency, whatever,
Yeah.
regardless of the sport, coaches have been through it all. They've been in very similar situations that you have. So who better to turn to than people who've been through the exact same thing?
Sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think that more and more coaches are willing to talk as
Yeah.
well. I think, even coaches that you might not know. Like obviously I have a circle of coaches that,
Mhm.
I rely upon them for advice and
Yeah.
a shoulder, and I trust them. And
Mhm.
and obviously we all have our circles, right?
Right.
But even people that are outside either your immediate circle or even the expanded circle,
Mhm.
you know what? Like, if I mean, here's a very sort of sad example, but um, I I mean, whenever I hear a story, read something, see something about like a student athlete passing away,
Oh. Mhm.
um, I I always reach out to the coach.
Mhm.
And if I reach out, if it's not to the coach, if I know someone at the department, I reach out to that person,
Mhm.
like another coach or whatever the case is, just to say, look, like this person might not want to talk,
Mhm.
and if they don't, that's fine. I
Yeah.
don't even know if I can really say I have something that might help them. I don't know,
Mhm.
but I have lived this exact experience that they are living right now, and
Mhm.
so and it's one that you never want, like, God forbid, it's like a parent losing a child,
Right.
right? You don't prepare for that mentally
No.
as a parent. You don't want to.
No.
And as coaches, we don't prepare for that either. Like, we don't want to do that.
Mhm.
And so but I experienced it. And so being willing to contact someone that, whether it's something like that or it's the other way around, and to say, you see someone who experiences something in their program similar, like job cuts
Right.
or losing or winning, or like with the Titans back in 2009.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we went on a stretch. We won our first 3 games
Mm-hmm.
down in Portland, and we went on a stretch where we lost, I think, 8 consecutive games.
Oh, geez.
I had never lost. I had never lost that many games like in my life
Mm-hmm.
up until that point, like consecutively. And I had no idea my assistant coaches, like they were kicking me out of the office, like go swim, go to the pool, and just I was distraught. And you know
Yeah.
what? I came across a book by called Confidence, and a Harvard psychologist,
Okay.
Rosabeth Moss Cantor. I still have that book,
Okay.
and you know, and basically it was like, look, like if you believe in what you're doing and you put in enough time, effort, and preparation to know that you're doing what you're doing for a reason,
Mm-hmm.
right? All right, well, you can beat you can lose without being defeated,
Right.
right? And so go back to work, and so we did, and we ended up winning 9 of our last 11, or something of that nature, maybe,
Okay.
and which was really cool.
Right.
But I was able to like contact and talk to some coaches that had losing stretches that had turned it around,
Right.
and that was helpful for me. So I just encourage everybody, where possible, communicate.
Yeah.
Don't no one's You're not an island. You're not supposed to do this on your own. We're all interconnected. So just
Right.
reach out to me.
Yeah.
Reach out to, Coach Eberhart.
Mm-hmm.
Reach out to Coach Hansen, either Coach Hansen. I'm pointing up at SFU and I'm pointing at UBC. Reach out to coaches. We're
Yeah.
just, Coach Kosminski, whoever it might be. Like, there are so many really open, genuine coaches. Just talk
Right.
to people. It really helps.
I've found that too with this whole preview series. Like, it's not easy, and just email coaches just to kind of give their thoughts and insight on teams, and kind of helps with roster projections and whoever else. Majority have reached and responded back, which has been fantastic. But again, you don't know until you reach out and just communicate and build the network and just talk. Because again, you can't do it on your own,
Yeah.
and I can't do this on my own. It's tough. I'm not
Just,
gonna lie, it's tough.
just like this program now with Douglas,
Yeah.
right? And you asked me about why, if like segueing into the Douglas preview,
Yeah.
I guess. You asked me, why Douglas,
Yeah.
and like I said earlier, when I've known Joe for quite a few years,
Mm-hmm.
and so he and I were talking. He and I talked during the year, and I've
Yeah.
watched his teams be successful, and
Mm-hmm.
I was going to make a joke, like, yeah, he's left me a real rebuild, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
it's true.
you
He
know,
packed up, took some of his guys, and left. He
no,
said,
well, I mean, I say that facetiously, because even though some guys left, like,
"Yeah,
the program is not in a rebuild; it's in a great
no,
spot.
yeah,
But when Joe was leaving, we talked about even his transition into VIU and what my experiences had been in different situations and whatnot, and I just contacted the school. Like, I had gotten a few questions from people about, are you gonna pursue the Douglas position, and quite frankly, my family and we'd been in some scenarios where we kind of we felt as if we had been taken advantage of, and so my wife was a bit gun shy about wanting to get back
mhm,
into, and certainly we we're more selective now, and we're not
Right.
necessarily looking to go into situations where we're chasing the label of
Right.
the league, the level or whatever.
Hmm.
It's again, as a young guy, that's kind of what you want to do, right?
Right.
And that's not the case anymore.
Right.
Certainly for us, like we we as we thought about the Douglas situation, I just contacted the athletic director Brian
Hmm.
directly.
Hmm.
Uh, rang him up one day, and we talked for a good 25-30 minutes, and I was asking him questions, because again, like, I've been around the block
Yeah.
enough times to kind of know, all right, so this is kind of this is what I need to be in as a situation in order for myself to feel fulfilled and be
Hmm.
challenged and learn and grow, and
Hmm.
then also be with like-minded people.
Right.
And, uh, and obviously, that conversation really ticked a lot of boxes, and then everything else that I had, all my other research and exploring of the Douglas department and culture,
Hmm.
kind of everything fit. A lot of boxes were getting ticked, and so here we are. We
Yeah.
went through the process, and we're grateful to be here. And well, we wouldn't, like, we wouldn't have just coached just to coach. Like, we
Right.
wouldn't have taken on a position just to
Just
just
for the
we
sake of it.
just for this. No, we wouldn't
Yeah.
do that. And But I'm glad. I'm really grateful to Royals Athletics and to Douglas College for the opportunity to take on the position at Douglas. And there's a great I feel like there's a great staff of coaches that I've been able to interact with already,
Hmm.
that I know I'm going to learn from, and I'm going to be able to bounce ideas off of, uh, in basketball and out of basketball.
Hmm.
And so I'm excited about that, being in a team environment for coaches, being, having a really a good coaching team.
Hmm.
And obviously the program's had a lot of success, and
Hmm.
Joe's done a great job and had been
Right.
successful even before that, obviously.
Right.
Uh, but he had a really good run here,
Right.
and hopefully I'm bringing my own dynamic. Obviously, like, our program's gonna be different.
Hmm.
Uh, Things are gonna be different, in a lot of different ways,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Because I'm a different person.
Yeah.
But we're not looking to take things apart. We're looking to build upon,
Right.
right? Because there's a really solid foundation. I'm really grateful to that. That hasn't always been the case.
Hmm.
And so it's exciting to walk into a situation where not only do we have expectations of success,
Hmm.
but we have some reasonable expectations of success,
Right.
and a foundation that we can build upon.
Yeah. If you look at last year's team again, it's a shame that nationals were canceled
What a
because
struggle! We had such a struggle last year.
that was tough. Look, count the 17-1 lone loss against the aforementioned VIU. So that was the only
Yeah.
one, and went through Pac West title, beat VIU in the final. Nationals were canceled, so that kind of left what if around the season. And I think for every team involved, but I think Douglas especially, I think with how they played and that group that they had, could have made some noise
Yeah,
on the big scale. I think for sure.
I I agree. I think they had a really talented team last year, and they were playing good basketball at the right time.
Hmm.
And I mean, the Pac West is. I mean, I've really appreciated the Pac West from afar,
Yeah.
having not coached in it before.
Hmm.
But there are a lot of really good coaches in this league, and
Yeah.
there are good programs in this
Hmm.
league, and it's not it's not just VIU.
No.
Uh, Although VIU, I think, frankly, VIU has set the standard for where I think other programs to compete.
Hmm.
They have got a good culture over there. I have a
Yeah.
lot of respect for Matt and his staff, and Av and everybody else that's working over there.
Hmm.
They do a good job with their guys, and they get them to play together, and they
Hmm.
get them to play the right way. And I have a lot of respect for that.
Yeah.
And obviously, Coach Eberhard has his success speaks for itself.
Right.
At Langara,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember being in Montreal watching Brody, Greg, and those guys go,
Yeah.
be very at nationals, and they were very, very successful. Or even at Quest, I was at that national championship as
Right.
well.
Yeah.
I was in the gym when the kid from Red Deer went off and
Oh, okay.
started nailing threes. You need to look that up.
I'll have to look it up. I'll have to
hit a
go
whole
back.
bunch of threes in a very short amount of time.
Okay.
And at the end of the game, and I think I'm not mistaken, Brody went 6 for 6 from the line in the last minute or something of that nature, and that got him through.
Yeah.
But
That's
anyway,
crazy.
but really good program at
Yeah.
Langara, and Camosun and Cap, and Okanagan, and my friend Rod Adrian coaching at CBC,
Yeah.
is he's going to do good things out there. He's a
Mm-hmm.
good man, and he's a good basketball coach, and I'm sure that program is going to get headed in the right direction. And so I like the Pac West is a fun league,
Yeah.
like I look forward to competing against all of these programs.
Mm-hmm.
And last year's Douglas team was certainly very talented,
Right.
and they were certainly playing good basketball at the right time. And it is a shame that nationals didn't happen, and there might be another banner up on the wall in our gym, but that now passes on to us.
Yep.
What are we going to do with that?
Yep.
What are we going to do with that opportunity, that legacy? That standard of where we are, and
Mm-hmm.
within the department, we absolutely 100% think that it's possible to win and do it right,
Yep.
and compete, and do it right.
Yep.
And I look forward to doing that here.
Obviously, the year itself is still up in the air with the whole pandemic. Hopefully, it starts in January, but I know you guys will be without a few names from last year's roster, to say the least. Like you said, Joe took a few of his guys with him to
We're
Fraser
happy for
Valley.
them. I want to say that, like,
100%.
I feel like, again, if you're an athlete-centered kind of culture, then what you want is what's best for that individual person.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I connected with one of those guys, who, when I took on the position,
Right.
one guy who had, his decision had not been made yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I connected with them, once. We had a great kid, nice conversation. And he ended up transferring to Fraser Valley, and
Mm-hmm.
and I'm happy for him. I'm happy for those other guys.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that's moving on, moving up, whatever the
Mm-hmm.
case is, stopping, focusing on school.
Mm-hmm.
Like our objective, is always going to be wanting to make sure that we have the best interests of our guys at
100%.
heart. I think that what that results in is an environment where people are free to be fully invested,
Mm-hmm.
because they know that we are actually fully invested in
Right.
them. So I'm happy for those guys, and I think that we return a really good core,
Mm-hmm.
a really good core of players, and that our incoming group of athletes, the ones that we've announced and the ones that are yet to be announced, I think that ultimately we should be all right. Hopefully we're able to compete,
Right.
that we can come together and play together as a team in a way that makes us a hard beat in a difficult league.
Yeah. The three that went on to Fraser Valley: Kim Morris, Aiden Wilson, Giordano Khan. You guys just announced or re-announced your 10 names so far in the recruiting class. 5 transfers, so you add in some veteran experience to the mix, and another 5 first years, What stands out to you about this group that you guys have coming in of recruits, and kind of what excites you about the future that they bring to the program?
In terms of the recruits, I'm excited about each of them as people.
Yeah.
They're 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 really good guys, and like I'm going to be happy to spend a lot of time with them, and hopefully they feel the same way. And like we do try and spend as much time as possible, talking with guys, letting them know, look, this is who we are, this is what we're going to be like, this is what it's going to feel like, to play for us. And they're good guys, and so far we've had lots of really positive interactions with amongst themselves, like within the group on our Zoom calls, or within the team, chats and stuff like that. Like it's been great to get to know them more.
Yep.
And some of the sort of activities that we've done together as a group has really, shown us more of the backstory for these guys. And so I'm excited about the good guy level of the group. And I mean, clearly our backcourt is going to be deep and murderer's row, so to speak. Like it's going to be a deep backcourt and a lot of different skill sets within the backcourt. In particular, returning guys like Dylan and Taylor Smith as well. Dylan Kinley, Taylor Smith, and Moses Goodluck, who is coming back to the program as well. You're adding guys to the back. It's going to be super competitive. It's going to be awesome. I can't wait. And the way we want to play, I think, is that it reflects obviously the ability to have multiple initiators of action on the court, not just offensively, but also defensively, and our ability to do different things with different guys at different positions.
Right.
A lot of backcourt, that guard wing sort of area. We're excited about the depth of the backcourt, and we're adding some size up front, and we'll see what happens in the next couple of weeks as we continue to try and shore up the rest of our class.
Well, if you look in the recruiting class alone, you have 8 guys that are listed as guards or wings, so depth is going to be no problem in the backcourt. And then you add in guys like a Chris McAlpine from the aforementioned Quest, Pac West experience. You have Cole Addison up front, Dominic Calderon, CBC transfers who have Pac West experience as well. To me, just from the outside, it's a really, really intriguing group that, again, like you said, adds depth on both ends that can kind of help in murderer's row, I think is a good way to put it.
Yeah. The experience and the background that each guy brings, no two guys, I mean, it's kind of self-evident, but no two guys are exactly the same.
Right.
And they each bring a different combination of skills and attributes and strengths and weaknesses to the table.
Right.
And the idea is that these are going to complement each other in ways that will make our style of play effective and our environment effective. And so a guy like Zach Usherwood, who, obviously has, CIS playing experience, both here in the West and also out East. He was part of a really good PEI team, and went to the final of the AUS, played in front of a packed Scotiabank center, and that's valuable, very valuable for our group. And you mentioned Chris and Dominic and Cole, and each of these guys bring something, whether it's perimeter shooting, unselfishness, grittiness on defense, the mindset that they don't ever need to shoot ever, in order to feel as if they're contributing to the team. some guys bring have an intriguing sort of profile in terms of their development
Mhm.
potential,
Yeah.
and so we see that there is some room to grow in each of our guys,
Mhm.
and in some guys we feel the ceiling is actually quite a long way away.
Okay.
And when you add that to, again, the returning group in the backcourt, but
Mhm.
also up front with Bolo and Ben Rabel,
Mhm.
you have a very interesting dynamic
Mhm.
um, of skill sets and different playing styles that hopefully, if we do, if I don't screw it up too bad and if I don't get in the way much,
Yeah.
um, we should be able to bring these guys together and play a fun style of basketball that is effective and
Right.
that maximizes what they do and that wins.
And again, complement one another, and just work towards that one collective goal. I'm excited to see a full year of Bolo just as a fan. He was impressive last year, and I think 10 games he played last year. Getting a full year of him, whatever a full year looks like this year,
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
it's just returning group again with Dylan, second team All Star, second in the league in 3-point shooting. You add in the 8 guards and wings you have coming in with experience, and you mentioned you add in to Dave Derry from Berman is another transfer guard with experience.
yeah.
It's a veteran group coming in for sure.
Yeah, it has a nice mix,
Mm-hmm.
and a guy like Philip, for example,
Yep.
Karanovich, he was at a JUCO last year. He played on a U16 national team in Serbia,
Mm-hmm.
has international experience,
Right.
has the ability to play, multiple positions on the perimeter, can really shoot the ball,
Mm-hmm.
can distribute the ball, can run a team, can play off the ball. But I'll tell you, as with him as it is with every other person on that list,
Mm-hmm.
they're good guys,
Yeah.
and they want to be a part of something special.
Right.
I think that matters. That matters more than
100%.
whether, like, what does a shot look like, or it's are
Yeah.
you going to be coachable? Are you going to be willing to be humble enough,
Mm-hmm.
right? Uh, to take coaching and to be a good teammate.
Yeah.
We we strongly try to live out. We believe and we try to live out the idea that you know gratitude is the antidote to entitlement.
Mm-hmm.
And we in fact, that was one of our first exercises with the group. We did a gratitude exercise. We asked them to just identify some people that were important to them in their journey, and
Okay.
then share a story about them and write something down, and we're going to like distribute, get it to those people,
Mm-hmm.
and share that with the team. And it's we the environment that we are in needs to be a living system,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
That's what an environment is. And so whether it's Philip or Jared Jacobs or Ahi coming out of BC Christian Prep,
Mm-hmm.
or Mason,
Yeah.
all of these guys, you know, are important in contributing to our environment.
Mm-hmm.
And, they all want to be a part of a team. And this is what we're going to be.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Obviously last year's group, super talented, and they were playing really well. And
Right.
hopefully we can be both talented uh, and a group and play well just like that,
Mm-hmm.
and put ourselves into positions where we can compete consistently
Mm-hmm.
with established programs like VIU
Right.
and Langara and what Cassidy's got going over at Cap. And
Mm-hmm.
we want to be in the mix, and we have objectives that we want to achieve just like everybody else. But
Yeah.
our group is designed to play together in a particular style of play
Mm-hmm.
that, with our backcourt and our perimeter versatility,
Mm-hmm.
should mean, you know
Yeah.
in August, it should mean some good basketball. We'll see what it means in in February.
Right.
Hopefully, I
But
don't get way too much.
I hope, well, you mentioned too, like the gratitude and everybody wants to be a part of the team. A lot of the stuff that matters most in recruiting is the stuff you can't teach. It's the attitude. It's just genuine good people. You can teach shop mechanics. You can teach X's and O's. You can teach whatever else. The stuff you can't teach is should be what matters most. And like you said, with the 10 guys you have, they're all good guys. And everything
Yeah,
else after that, you can sort out one way or another. You can't teach attitude. You can't teach how to
yeah.
be a good person.
And look, I mean, they're good guys. They're not perfect guys,
If if they
right?
were perfect, then they'd probably be Jesus, and that
I'm
doesn't
not perfect.
happen. No,
I'm not perfect.
nope.
So, when when we talk about the character of a team, I
Mm-hmm.
think every coach, to a greater or lesser degree, lives out that calling
Mm-hmm.
to recruit high character guys
Yep.
that can play,
Mm-hmm.
and then coach both the player and the person.
Right.
And part of that, as we talked about earlier, is that we're not always going to live up to the standards that we
No.
have. And so, I don't expect these guys to be perfect. They weren't perfect in the past. They're not going to be perfect with me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to be perfect. I wasn't perfect in the past. I'm not going to be perfect moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
I think what it requires, though, is coming to an agreement and
Mm-hmm.
saying, this is who we are now, who we're going to be.
Mm-hmm.
This is what's important to us. We are going to live this day in and day out.
Right.
When when someone falls short, we're going to call them up rather than call them out,
Mm-hmm.
and make it such that, okay, it's we want to do this, and it's not so much I got to, right? It's I get to be a part of this culture. I get to
Right.
be a part of this program.
Mm-hmm.
I get to go to this lift, go to this, XYZ, whatever the case is. And what an incredible opportunity for me. And entitlement, I think, is the root of where a lot of problems originate.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so you have I need my shots because I'm the guy, or I was the guy last year, or or whatever,
Yeah.
whatever. I was the
Mm-hmm.
guy on my high school team. Why am I not getting the ball? It
Yeah.
can't start from there. It has to
No.
start with, how do we figure out
Mm-hmm.
what you do that makes this guy better, and that makes us better,
Mm-hmm.
and that you can do really well, that you can do better than anyone else. And that might be setting screens, that might be running the floor, that might be waving a towel, you
Yep.
know, whatever the case is. We love every one of them. And
Yep.
I'm excited about where the program will be. And
Yep.
I think the class that we have right now, hopefully we can be all right on the court,
Yep.
but most importantly, we've got to be okay off the court.
Yeah. And mistakes are going to happen regardless, as long as you one identify the mistake, learn from it, and like we've said before, just continue that upward climb. Everything will work out as it should. If, like you said, if you call them out as opposed to call them up, you're going to have issues. And as long as you learn from mistakes, we all make them. We're not perfect. Nobody is. As long as you learn from it and improve next time you're in that situation, that's really all you can ask for.
For sure. For sure.
Was there anything else we missed on your journey, on the team, that you want to shed some light on before?
No, I mean, I enjoyed that conversation. I'm happy to hop on and talk if you want to talk about something else specifically.
Hey.
But about Douglas, like I really am excited about the group of guys.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really excited about the returning guys.
Yeah.
Those guys have been a part of some really special teams.
Yeah.
And they were well coached. And both coming up and then in school, in
Mm-hmm.
college, and so I'm excited about what they bring to the table, and this incoming class, I think, is it's going to be fun to watch them on court, watch
Mm-hmm.
them develop. Obviously, these are unique times
Yes.
with the pandemic and everything that's going on in the world. And so we've wanted to try and be as forthcoming and engaging with our group as possible.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we barely talked about basketball,
Right.
barely talked about, you know, what our style of play, you know, will be.
Mm-hmm.
Or in fact, we haven't talked about that at all.
That's fair.
You know, we're mainly, you know, making sure guys are okay, making sure,
Yeah.
you know, checking in with how families are doing, and
Yeah.
you know, health wise, mental health wise,
Mm-hmm.
you know, with the um, uh, the, the the much needed movement around social justice.
Yes.
We, you know, we're trying to engage with that as a program, and you know, we're going to want our players to lead us in that,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, try to learn as much as possible, and
Yep.
try to you know, act where we are,
Yep.
and it's a much needed debate that
Yes.
is happening, and we want to be a part of that,
Mm-hmm.
uh, where appropriate. And so, you know, right now the group is connecting during this time,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and we're trying to lay seeds, and we're trying to, you know, water the soil and try
Yep.
to grow our environment.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully, you know, in BC, we're relatively in a good spot,
Yep.
though that can change.
Yep.
Uh, but, you know, hopefully we're in a position where come September, we're transitioning to a different phase
Right.
of our restart, which allows us to train
Mm-hmm.
uh, more, you know, more seriously, more collectively with
Yep.
contact and those sorts of things.
Right.
And then, you know, we'll start the process of building our on-court identity, our on-court environment, as much as we are building our off-court environment.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and so I'm just really excited to be, you know, at Douglas, and this is home. My wife, we moved here, you know, we moved back before all of this happened because it was the
Okay.
right thing to do for the family.
Right.
Um, you know, to my wife's family is all here, and
Okay.
my three children are getting older, and it was time to move back.
Mm-hmm.
Family health issues and whatnot, and so it was just time
Mm-hmm.
to come back to BC, and then, you know, the doors open, and here I am, and I'm very excited to be at Douglas
Yep.
for the long term, and I'm very excited to be working with this first group of student athletes at the program, and I'm looking forward to what's coming next.
I'll leave it at that then. I don't think anything else I could say could add to that or top that. So, David, I want to thank you for doing this. This was a ton of fun. And like you said off the top, we've talked privately behind the scenes beforehand to try and put it together. So, really appreciate you taking the time. And again, congratulations on the position. And looking forward to seeing what you guys have in store for year one when we can get back on a court.
I appreciate that, Tyler, and again, I want to wish you all the best in doing what you do.
Thank you.
The game needs more eyeballs on it,
Yes.
uh, and I really wish, like, my hope is that, you know, the U Sport and the CCAA in Canada, our programs, we can really um, take the opportunities that we have locally
Mm-hmm.
to, you know, you look down south, you know, they embrace who they are at the NAIA
Yep.
level, or they embrace it.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I think part of my own coaching experience has been the idea that you can make any place the big time, and
Yep.
you work your heart out, and you care no matter where you are.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter what the level is. You don't have to be a professional to be professional. And you know, like, the work that you're doing is critically important, and I hope that our programs can really get grounded and rooted into our various communities,
Mm-hmm.
so that we can get the interest, you know, within New Westminster, within Burnaby, where
Yep.
we are, Coquitlam,
Yep.
right? And you know, Vancouver or North Van or whatever the case is, but like wherever our local area is. And I'm just fortunate that at Douglas, I get to join a really good program, and I'm excited about my coaching staff. We'll be looking forward to announcing our coaching staff, soon.
Mm-hmm.
Really excited about the staff that I have. I think we've got a great mix of personalities and experiences
Mm-hmm.
that are going to really help our environment and help me. They're good guys, and I can't wait to get everything together. So thank you again, and best of luck to you, and hopefully we can do this again some other time.
Anytime you want to jump on to talk Douglas, talk CCAA, U Sports, anything, we always have a spot here for you.
No one's ever accused me of not wanting to talk, so be careful what you wish for.
Okay, I will hold you to it, and we'll do it again sometime soon.
All right, sounds good. I appreciate you.